back in your life for this wonderful Saturday afternoon. UFC 245. Super excited for this card, guys. Got a lot to go over here. Tons of really good fights that I'm excited about from a fan perspective, as I'm sure all of you are as well. But also a lot of money to be won. There's 50K up top in the big Draftkings main tournament, 24.50 to enter. Got a few bullets in there. So basically for anybody that hasn't watched one of these before, I go fight by fight, break down the matchup, any key stuff that I dug through doing tape study or research on my own, and then basically go from there. And then at the end, go over my core fighters for DraftKings. Along the way, I'll mention some of the betting lines that we'll look at, go through my favorite bets for the card as well, and recap my core and strategy for tournaments. Any questions, feel free to interrupt me at any time as per usual. Any questions, just get them in the chat and we will go from there. All right, boys. So the first fight on the card is going to be one of the fights that I'm excited about. We have Punahele Soriano making his UFC debut, fought on Dana White Contender Series this season. I think it was week 1. For anyone that watched that fight, basically he's a southpaw, super green. Only had six professional fights, counting the Dana White Contender Series, undefeated. 5 of those all came prior to the Dana White Contender Series. Every fight that he's been in actually ended in the first round. The Dana White Contender Series fight was the only one that didn't, and it went all 3 rounds. And he did look a little bit gassed, but he had enough left in the tank. Looked pretty good, and obviously this is a step up in competition here, UFC debut. But the guy who he's facing is really not that good, and he's coming in as an underdog here. So right off the bat here, I think we have a value bet in Soriano at plus 100, because I think he should actually be a slight favorite here against Oscar Piechota. Piechota is supposed to be like this high-level grappler. He's coming off 2 UFC losses by submission, and even in his wins, he didn't look all that impressive. Doesn't like to be hit, not very comfortable on the feet. Whereas Soriano, I mentioned southpaw, he throws heavy left hands. He's looking to end the fight in the first round, which you love to see that for DraftKings. But that's why his cardio was tested, was because he had never not gotten that early round knockout. And from throwing, that's why a lot of other fighters don't throw with power in they don't put everything in every punch that they throw, because you will gas. Well, Soriano doesn't care. He's looking for the finish at all times. Like I said, he throws really heavy looping overhands with the left, and if he connects with one of those, I think he's going to put Piechota out. And that's actually my prediction for this fight. He is my pick. I picked him to win by knockout. I like the value on the betting line, and I like the value on DraftKings at 8.2, I think. He's either 8K or 8.2. Where are you at here? Yeah, Soriano 8.2 and Piechota is 8K. So overall, just not a ton of interest in Piechota. Like I said, I wasn't impressed. 8.2. Thank you, Crusader. What up, Brett? Overall, not impressed with Piechota whatsoever. I just think Soriano has his way with him on the feet. And if he does want to wrestle, Soriano has a high level wrestling background, and basically Piechota has terrible takedown defense as it is, and he's not afraid to pull guard either. So Soriano could land takedowns at will. He was an All-American college wrestler at the D3 level. The only reason I would have like a little bit of pause of Soriano, like I'm not saying to go all in, is because I mentioned he throws those heavy left hands. Sometimes he overextends himself, actually a lot, because he's swinging with so much power that a good counter striker would be able to take advantage of that. But the thing is Piechota, like I said, he's not a good striker. So like outside of a lucky submission after Piechota gets taken down, if he gets like a lucky submission off his back, or like a lucky one-punch knockout after Soriano extends himself, like those are really the only ways that I see Pichota winning this fight. It's not something I would bet on. I'm going to have very limited exposure on DraftKings. And like I said, I'll be pretty heavy on my boy Soriano. So hopefully he starts the night off on a good note, because they are the first fight of the night. But Soriano is my official pick, and I like both the bet and the DraftKings play. Moving on to the next fight on the card, Jessica Ai versus Araujo. And basically, this one I don't have a ton of interest in. And really, it's just because, first of all, I just never have interest in Jessica Ai. She doesn't score well on DraftKings. And she's coming in as a decent underdog here. But the fight as a whole is minus 290 to go to decision. And Viviana Araujo, like, I would have a little bit of interest in her, but she's just too expensive. She's 8.8K. If we can find her on here somewhere. Why are you so hard to find? No, she's not 8.8K. That's Araujo, 8.6K. But yeah, so she's 8-1. Doesn't really score that great unless she, she got the finish here in her fight against Bernardo, but fought Alexis Davis. Alexis Davis is a can, and she only scored 74 DraftKings points. I just think it's going to be a low-scoring decision here, where both fighters don't pay off salary. And even if Jessica Ai won, like, she's the cheaper fighter, so in theory it would make more sense for her to have a better path to paying off her salary at 7.6K. But even in wins, like, we've seen her score high 60s, low 70s here. I'm not impressed. I don't think she wins, and I think both fighters bust in salary. So for that reason, we're not going to spend too much time on it, and we can move on. Don't like the fight. I think on a stacked card like this, where we have a ton of fights for the belt and we have a ton of fights that are likely to end inside the distance, this is not one of them, and this should not be one that you target. All right, so moving on to Brandon Moreno versus Kai Kara France. This one is interesting. I definitely am lower on Kai Kara France as a prospect than the general public is. And the reason is because, like, I don't know, he always seems to get, like, all this hype. Like, everyone thinks he's like this big up and coming prospect, and I don't think he is. I think he's just kind of a middle of the pack prospect. He's an active striker, he's a good striker, and really just a point fighter. So I think that can take you, it can take you decently far in the UFC, but once you hit a certain level, it's like, it just he doesn't do it for me. Like, he's had trouble with guys like Paiva in that fight. I was actually on Paiva. I thought Paiva won that fight. A lot of people did. It was pretty much a robbery. And even in the final round of that one, like, he was running away from him, just not looking to engage. So that's why I say, like, he fights smart. If he knows he's ahead, he's not going to look for the finish. He's okay with cruising to a decision. You don't like to see that on DraftKings. He is only 8.5K. We've seen him more expensive than that in the past. But Moreno, on the flip side, he's a dog of a fighter. Like, we've seen him as an underdog in multiple spots. Actually, just a couple months ago, Brandon Moreno fought. Who did he fight? I was on Moreno again in that fight, and I thought it was very clear that he won, and they called it a draw. And it ended up burning me. It cost me quite a bit because I had Moreno in a couple good lineups. Yeah, Askarov, that was it. I think that was the Russian card. That was actually on my birthday. And I thought it was clear that he won. He almost got a submission victory, but I thought it was clear that he won. Ended up getting the draw, so really hasn't won since 2017 against Dustin Ortiz. But on that note, like, coming into the UFC, he submitted Louis Smolka. He beat Dustin Ortiz. Like, those are some just a couple years ago, those are some really talented guys in that division. I know he lost to Pantoja, got beat up on the feet. He's not a good striker, but he does have some decent kicks. I think while this fight plays out on the feet, Kai Kara France is probably going to beat him up. He's going to stay active. He lands like around 5 significant strikes per minute. So the volume is enticing at 8.5K, but he's not going to get a finish. And so that's why it's like, when you look at the other options around him, Max Holloway only $200 more, Amanda Nunes only $600 more. I'm just not going to be heavily exposed to Kai Kara France, although he is my pick to win by decision. I actually have more interest in Moreno, even though I think it's unlikely he wins. he is the type of fighter that will look to be very aggressive, especially if he gets this fight to the mat. I know Kai Kara-France has decent takedown defense, but if Moreno gets this to the mat and takes his back, like, it might be lights out for Kai Kara-France. And at 7.7K, if he does get an early submission victory, he's probably going to score really, really well. So more interest on Moreno, but he's not my favorite underdog at that price. But I'm definitely going to have more Moreno than Kai Kara-France, although it's more likely Kara-France cruises to a decision victory where he scores maybe around 80 points. But at 8.5K, we're looking for a little bit more. So yeah, so that's my take on that one. We can move on to the next fight on the card, which is the last one on the early prelims, Chase Hooper, Daniel Tamor. This one is interesting, man. Like, this one, and what's funny is, like, everybody's spending their time breaking down, like, the fights for the belt, the main card. Like, yeah, obviously those are important, but it's these early prelims and the prelim card fights that's going to make or break the night, because these are the ones where you're going to get somebody that ends up scoring really well in the mid-range, and you're going to need them around the right fighters in the main card. So this one in particular, like, it's minus 180 not to go to decision. And basically, you know, Daniel Tamor is a guy who's never been someone that we can trust. He's not very good. Decent striker. He will throw heavy shots, but usually doesn't do a ton of damage or connect clean with them. Does put himself in some vulnerable positions. But on the flip side, Chase Hooper is the youngest fighter in the UFC. He does not look good on tape. Like, I put up a tweet the other day talking about how Chase Hooper looks like a punching bag on tape, and that was actually putting it lightly. Like, he actually has, like, some of the worst regional tape that I've ever seen. Like, he's not UFC talent. And Daniel Tamor, like, if this was anybody else, I would take Chase Hooper. I would take who's ever fighting Chase Hooper in a heartbeat. Daniel Tamor, not somebody that we can really trust, but I'm still probably going to be pretty heavy on him. Yeah. What up, Elliot? Chase Hooper is 5 years old. Yeah, he looks like it. I think he's actually, realistically, I think he's 20 years old. He's just younger than what's her name? Macy Barber. So if anybody saw the interview with Macy Barber and Ariel Helwani, they were talking about how she's the youngest fighter in the UFC, and she was like, "No, I think Chase Hooper is younger, but he's not actively fighting." Well, now he is, because he was on the, like, developmental deal where basically they were going to promote him on the regional scene, and once he is ready, they're going to bring him up to the UFC. Well, now, according to them, they think he's ready. Like I said, I don't. He is very tall. He's 6'1". He's going to be about 6 inches taller. I took Tamor finish in first 2 rounds at 3-1. That's a good bet, honestly. Like I said, I think Tamor is a guy who we historically have not been able to trust. He's 1-3 in the UFC, lost his first 3 fights, then won against Sang-Hun Jo or whoever, whatever that dude's name was, in his last fight. And it wasn't pretty. It wasn't high scoring. But like I said, Chase Hooper can be hit. And Daniel Tamor throws heavies. Like, it would not surprise me if he does hurt him. And like Chase Hooper, I mentioned he has this massive, like, height and reach advantage. Daniel Tamor's like 5'6" or something, and Chase Hooper's 6'1". He looks like a twig. Like, he looks like a skeleton almost. And I mean, he was thrown around on the Dana White Contender Series fight last year, and he ended up winning that fight, but he looked bad. Like, through the first 2 rounds, like, I thought they should have stopped it. He was getting beat up so badly by some, like, unknown nobody. So like I said, I'm leaning Daniel Tamor here. It's a close fight. Tamor's plus 100. Looking at the inside distance line, and this is why this fight's important. I mentioned it's likely to end inside the distance. Daniel Tamor plus 247. That's a decent line for his price. In the mid-range, I think he's, let's see, what is he, 7.9, I think? Let's look it up. Yeah, Daniel Tamor, 7.9. And like I said, he generally doesn't score well. but it's not because he's not trying to finish. Like, he throws heavies, he's just not super technical, doesn't set them up very well, and he's actually fought some decent people like Fishgold. That's, you know, and Julio Arce. Like, those are some decent talent compared to who Chase Hooper is fighting on the regional scene. So that's a pretty good inside distance line for 7,900. So like I said, I'm going to have exposure to both because for whatever reason, people are betting Chase Hooper. Like I said, I don't really see it with him, but his inside distance line is plus 45, and it's actually been trending decently over the past couple of days. It was at plus 165 yesterday, and it's now at plus 145. That's a good line for 8.2K. So I'm definitely going to have sides of both of this one. I think it's important if you're running multiple lineups to not take such a heavy stance to where a shitty fight like this is going to decide your night. Especially since both of the guys aren't super talented. But like Daniel Tamer, he's won like a Muay Thai striking. He was like a former Muay Thai striking champion back in the day, him and his brother. So it's not like he's the worst striker. And like I said, Chase Hooper is not comfortable on the feet. Generally gets beat up, looks to pull guard. Like 6'1", and he's literally wrapping dudes up behind the head and just pulling guard because he is a decent grappler, but you know, I don't think Daniel Tamer, like we've seen him get tested against Fishgold, and I know he lost that fight, but it's not like if Tamer gets into Chase Hooper's guard, he's a dead man or anything like that. So, like I said, my lean is Tamer, and I'm gonna have more Tamer. I'll be targeting both sides, but not impressed with Chase Hooper whatsoever. It would not shock me if the dude just gets totally sparked, even in the first round. So we can move on to another fight that is likely to end inside the distance. Matt Brown, Ben Saunders. Matt Brown coming off a 3-year layoff where he actually retired. If it wasn't for the layoff, I think I would be a lot more confident in him. But I never really like betting guys or taking them on DraftKings coming off of the layoff, especially if the layoff is due to retirement. Like we just saw with Stefan Struve last week where he got kicked in the balls by Ben Rothwell, and yeah. So basically, I still think I like Matt Brown here. I think he's going to be heavier owned than he should be, and that's because Ben Saunders could actually like sneeze and knock himself out. That's how much of a chin Ben Saunders has. Matt Brown's the second biggest favorite on the card. His inside distance line is minus 180. That's the best inside distance line on the slate. And Saunders has lost 5 of his last 6 fights. 4 of those losses have been knockouts. I think he's been knocked out 10 times in the UFC. You know, there's not a ton to go off of here. It's basically just I don't trust Saunders' chin. I think it's likely at some point in the first or second round, Matt Brown probably hits him, probably hurts him, and puts him away. Yeah, best way to treat it is a first round TKO. Yep. But the problem is at 9.3K, 9.3, he has to have that first round KO. And that's why I said, like, I think he's going to be more owned than he should be. Not that he's not a great play like he is. I mentioned best inside distance line on the slate. I'm going to have exposure to him. But yeah, I like it more of a bet for sure. Bet him first round TKO. On DraftKings, I still like him. But like I said, like there are paths to where maybe for whatever reason Sanders doesn't get knocked out in the first or even second round. And then Matt Brown's definitely busting that price tag. And when we have other options that are so expensive, like Peter Yan at 9.4, we have Amanda Nunes a little bit cheaper. We have Max Holloway cheaper, Kamaru Usman cheaper. You know, there's other options. And I think Matt Brown's going to be one of the heaviest owned guys on the slate. So that's why I'm leaning towards an underweight stance, although I do think he is a strong play in all formats. Moving on to the next fight on the card, Ian Heinisch, Omari Akhmedov. Ian Heinisch, 8.4K, Omari Akhmedov, 7.8K. And this is another one similar to that Jessica I fight. You know, on such a stacked card, this fight is pretty much a stay away for me. This fight as a whole is minus 190 to go to decision. Additionally, neither fighter scores well on DraftKings historically. I could see this fight being a lot of like hold you up against the cage, grind it out, land a takedown or two, you know, top control. I lean Ian Heinisch here, just because we've seen he definitely has the cardio to go the distance, and it seems like the narrative on him is the longer the fight goes, the better he starts to fight, and it's usually due to that cardio advantage. But at 8.4K, I don't love the price. Minus 130 is a decent bet to add to parlays, but I definitely like the bet more than I do DraftKings, just because, like I said, like he can win this fight, land 2 or even 3 takedowns, and still not do enough for us at 8.4. He's coming off I believe the loss to Derek Brunson. Let me find him on here. Where are you at, Heinisch? Oh, I'm going blind. Okay, there he is. Yeah, he lost to Derek Brunson. Yeah. Oh, that sucks. Yeah, I was actually on Derek Brunson for that fight. I thought he would have scored better. Brunson, I thought he got gypped on significant strikes in that fight, but that's just something with Fight Metric that we always have to deal with. Still a little pissed about that one though. But yeah, so basically, even in his decision fights where he does land a takedown, got a knockdown and a takedown against Cesar Ferreira, and only scored 76. So when he's an underdog, that's fine. That's pretty solid. But at 8.4K as a favorite, if he scores in the 70s, like it's not going to kill you, but it's not going to win you a tournament either. Like when we're not looking to min cash tournaments, we're looking for that 50K. So Ian Heinisch, more of a stay away. Like I said, better bet for me, because I'm not really worried about Akhmedov. He's a decent wrestler too, but I think the cardio advantage is going to be a factor here. And I think Heinisch is actually a little bit better on the feet as well. So, like I said, like the bet, don't like him as a play on DraftKings, so we won't spend too much time on that one. Moving on to Irene Aldana versus Ketlin Vieira. This is the one I was talking about before. Vieira is 8.8K. So this one I think I like a little bit more though. I know it's likely to go decision, minus 350, but so Vieira doesn't have a good inside distance line. It's like, yeah, plus 425. Not great at 8.8K, obviously. But I do think there are paths to where she can get a finish here. Irene Aldana, not super comfortable off her back, but she does have decent takedown defense. So on the flip side, Aldana is like, she's been a very active striker. She's landed over 100 significant strikes in multiple fights. Her last one, 125, scored 93 DraftKings points. The fight against Pudilova, 119, like 108 against Smith. Caitlin Chikagian, 84-83 against Carrera. Like, she's had decent volume throughout her career. So at 7.4K, like, there are paths to where if she stuffs takedowns from Vieira and she just out volumes her on the feet and wins a decision. If she comes through like that at 7.4K, then she's going to be a dog that you probably want some exposure to. So I do think it's more likely Vieira wins, but as far as DraftKings goes, I do like Aldana here, just because, like I said, the price is too steep on Vieira. She's actually, at that price, she's never 10x'd her salary. And so, like I said, I have more interest on Aldana as a cheap underdog. She has a high floor because we know she's probably not going to be finished, and she does have a decent chance to win. So there are some really good underdogs on this slate, but she's definitely in the mix at 7.4K. And the women's fights are usually less owned than the male fights. So that's why I usually, if I have a lean on a women's fight, I usually go really heavy on them because they're generally under-owned. So I like Aldana as an underdog pick. I think she's a live dog. Moving on to another one where I have some interest in the underdog is Jeff Neal versus Mike Perry, Platinum Mike Perry. Mike Perry's a great character. Love Mike Perry fights. They're always entertaining. He's always entertaining. If you saw the weigh-ins, the stare downs, like he brings the heat every time. And he's coming off the loss to Vicente Luque. I actually thought he won that fight. I'll go to my grave saying he won that fight. I think, maybe if his nose doesn't like deform and break like that, then like I think that played a factor in the judge's decision, because I thought it was pretty clear. It was definitely a close fight, but I thought it was pretty clear that Mike Perry did enough to win 2 of the 3 rounds in that one. It is kind of a quick turnaround for him, which is worrisome. And I know his confidence is a little bit lower. That's been the narrative. Is I guess he came out in an interview and said like, I'm on the chopping block because he's lost a few in a row. He's definitely not on the chopping block. Fan favorite, good fighter, good entertainer. He's not going anywhere, but this should be a fun one. You know, Jeff Neal on the flip side, he's a good striker as well. Been knocking guys out. Plus 156 inside distance line is okay, but for that price, it's actually not that good, especially considering the options that we have around him. I think this is definitely the biggest test in competition for Jeff Neal. So anybody thinking like, if you look at his game logs, which I'll pull up because that's what a lot of people tend to do, is just look at game logs and they're like, oh, this guy knocks everybody out, or this guy always scores 100. He's going to do it again. And that's just not how this works if you know anything about mixed martial arts. But basically, he knocked out Nico Price. He beat Bilal Muhammad, beat Frank Camacho. Like, he scores well in all of these. Like I said, Mike Perry's better than all of those guys, in my opinion. This is a step up in competition. And Mike Perry has never been knocked out. So, like, anybody thinking that Jeff Neal's just going to, like, walk in there and knock out Mike Perry, like, I just don't see that happening. And at 7.1K, if Mike Perry's going to stay alive, he could pay that off on volume alone, potentially, if this turns into a firefight. And I think he has a real path to win. And this is minus 170 not to go to decision. I think he even has, plus 345 inside distance line. Not trending the direction we want to see, but, I mean, it's not getting terribly worse either. I think Mike Perry is another one in the Aldana mix where we have so many underdogs that I think have a real shot to win. Mike Perry's one of them. It's definitely going to be a fun one, though, no doubt about it. So I'm thinking that Neal is going to be heavier owned than Perry, but I kind of lean Perry as a live dog on DraftKings just for the price. Perry max bet TKO me on tequila at 10 p.m. Hey, I mean, that you could do worse than max bet Mike Perry. Like every time like that I bet on an underdog, like I don't ever want to see them like come out looking like chill, like not even phased, not in the moment whatsoever. Like if you're betting on an underdog, you want it to be a guy like Mike Perry. Like he's at the weigh-ins, like screaming to the crowd, let's go. Like he's ready to go, and he's a dog. He's ready to fight. He's here to entertain us and bring the fire. So you can do a lot worse than bet Mike Perry as an underdog. So I like him. I'll have a decent amount of exposure on DraftKings. We can move on to I believe the first fight on the main card, Peter Yan versus Uriah Faber. Basically, Jan's the biggest favorite on the card. The only problem with that is he's a little bit too expensive for my liking. I think they could have priced him a little bit differently, but because they rely so heavily on the Vegas lines, that's why he's the most expensive. Even in his last fight, he scored 2 knockdowns and still finished in the 80s. He literally has to get a finish along with a takedown or 2 and or a knockdown to have a chance at the optimal lineup. So although I think he cruises to a decision pretty easily, I think I'm not going to have much of him. I don't have any interest in Uriah Faber. I know he came through as the biggest underdog on the card against Ricky Simon, but let's be honest, Ricky Simon has chin issues. Peter Yan does not. So I think Peter Yan he has the pace. He's probably the better striker, definitely the better wrestler. He's got to cruise to decision. I just don't like the price. He's more of a guy that mix into parlays so you don't eat that heavy line on him. I would just mix him into parlays with like Soriano and some of the live underdogs that we talked about, just so you get a little bit more bang for your buck. Second fight on the main card is Marlon Moraes versus Jose Aldo. The talk of this one is obviously Jose Aldo dropping down to bantamweight and literally looking like Gollum from Lord of the Rings. But, you know, he didn't look good. He looks a little bit better now. I did see something of him after he's a little bit replenished. He does look a little bit more healthy. He's definitely the bigger guy at bantamweight. Moraes is not a big dude. But Marias is the rightful favorite here, coming off the big loss to Henry Cejudo for the belt back in June in Chicago. The problem is at 9K, like similar to Peter Yan, to Jeff Neal, like at this expensive price tag, we almost have to have that finish. Is it possible that he just knocks out Jose Aldo in the first round? Sure. He's knocked out multiple people in the first round. It wouldn't be the first time. But we've also seen him, when he doesn't get that first round finish, be a pretty low scoring on DraftKings. Like before he went on that run where he finished like 3 people in the first round, he didn't score. Like he had a decision victory where he put up like 57 points. Like that is within the range of possibility here. 58 points, and it was against Dotson. And then obviously, so you had the knockout, Jimmy Rivera, Aljamain Sterling, Rafael Assunção, where he stubbed him. So those were the 3 first-round finishes, but we saw him look beatable against Henry Cejudo. Not that Jose Aldo is going to go in there and, he can't wrestle like Henry can, but, it's just at 9K. Do I think Marias wins? Sure. Do I think he knocks out Jose Aldo in the first round? It kind of surprised me, to be honest. Like, I know the weight cut was tough for Aldo, and he has been finished before in the first round, but it's just not something that I'm looking to bet on. I'm more confident in Amanda Nunes, more confident in Kamaru Usman. Those fights are just more of the ones I want to target. I think this one could have the potential to bust. But I will have a couple Marias. I'll probably just be underweight to the field depending on his ownership. Moving on to the next fight on the card, which is Amanda Nunes, Germaine de Randamie. This one, I have pretty strong confidence in Amanda Nunes here. Minus 315 favorite. I actually don't think that's high enough. I wanted to highlight her, not just her inside distance line. She's minus 140 inside the distance, which I do like that as a bet. It was actually better. It was around 200 not that long ago, a couple weeks ago. These lines have been out for a while, and it's actually come back up to where I think it's bettable again at minus 140. But I actually I wanted to look at her TKO because I think she does win by TKO, and that one is a lot better. I think it was, yeah, here we go, plus 169 by TKO, and it's actually been trending the wrong way. I like that bet a lot because I think minus 148 to finish inside distance on DK, I hammered that. Yeah, like I said, I think there's value in that line. I think she does get a finish here. I like betting the TKO one just because I think there's more value in it because, so on the feet, right, like Germaine de Randamie, does she have a chance on the feet? Sure. But Amanda Nunes is the pound-for-pound GOAT. Like, exactly. Have people forgotten how good Amanda Nunes is? They might have, because they saw the early knockout of Aspen Ladd that Germaine de Randamie had. But let's not forget, like, Aspen Ladd had, like, the worst weight cut of her career. It was when she was shaking on the scale and looked like she was going to have a seizure. And then even walking out of the tunnel, like, her balance was off. She tripped walking out of the tunnel. Like, a really, really, really tough weight cut like that affects your balance. It affects your equilibrium. She got hit with I think it was a left hand and immediately crumpled over. Like that's just super fluky. A flash knockout like that. Like it's not like taking away from Germaine de Randamie. She's a decent kickboxer, a good striker, but Amanda Nunes just has more power, and she's a good striker as well. Obviously, like. There's a reason Germaine de Randamie didn't want to fight Cyborg. I'm surprised she's even took this fight because Amanda Nunes arguably hits harder than Cyborg. And then the other side of it is Amanda Nunes is a fucking black belt. Like, and Germaine de Randamie off her back is very uncomfortable. And the first time these ladies fought, Amanda Nunes took her down. That was all she needed to do, and she got the finish. Can it play out like that again? Sure. Would that surprise me? No, not at all. That's why the inside distance line is more steamed than the TKO line, is because I think a lot of people are thinking that she does take her to the ground and submit her. The reason why I like the TKO line though is because I think if Germaine de Randamie does stuff the takedowns, I think Nunes just knocks her out. And even if Nunes does take her down, she doesn't have to submit her. She has some fierce ground and pound, and Germaine de Randamie has shown throughout her career when she's on her back, she's not good at getting up. She's not good at scrambling. So I think Amanda Nunes will take her down. That's my prediction is TKO via ground and pound Amanda Nunes. So I do like that line. I like the inside distance line as well. She's probably my favorite play on DraftKings. I think she has the safest floor and one of the highest ceilings, along with some of the other fighters left on this card that we'll get to. But definitely one of my favorite plays is Amanda Nunes. Moving on to the next fight on the card is Max Holloway versus Alexander Volkanovski. This one's going to be another action-packed fight. Both of these guys land over 6 significant strikes per minute. Like, just for reference, like, I think UFC average is like 2.5 to 3. So, like, there's going to be action here. Basically, I love Max Holloway. I'm always a Max Holloway guy. He's my official pick by decision. Like, I'm not going to sugarcoat it, but I will have significant exposure to Alexander Volkanovski. It's a price thing at 7.5K. His volume is so high that even in a loss, he can outscore some of the fighters that win. So, and it wouldn't shock me if either fighter won too. Like, Max Holloway, I think, is better. He's fought the better level of competition. He's held up against them. He's one of the best strikers in the division and in the UFC. Volkanovski's good as well, too. Like, this is definitely the biggest test for him, and I think he's deserving of this shot at the belt for sure. But I just think, both guys have good cardio. Both guys good strikers. It legitimately could go either way. I think Holloway's the rightful favorite at -170. Like I said, he's my pick. Anytime you can get Max Holloway under 9K, you just got to play him on DraftKings. Like, just look at the type of volume that he puts up. If you aren't familiar with Max Holloway, or if this is your first time playing, like, he's one of those guys that you just play pretty much every time because he lands so much volume, especially like in a 5-round fight. 181 in a loss to Dustin Poirier, 290 against Brian Ortega. He's obviously really hittable. Jose Aldo, 174. Like, these are realistic numbers that he can put up here. And 190 fantasy points, like, if he puts up 150, like, you have to have him at 8.7K. So that's why my pick is Holloway. I think it's more likely he wins. But like I said, it's not like, it wouldn't shock me if Volkanovski won a close decision. So, yeah, I mean, at 7.5K, I think Volkanovski is going to be one of the heaviest owned underdogs, and rightfully so, just because, like I said, even in a loss, he can 10x his salary. Ownership projection on this fight, I would say Max Holloway is going to be up there with Amanda Nunes as one of the most popular. He'll probably be around 45%. I would say a little bit higher, but the card is so stacked that I don't think really anybody is going to go above 50. So I think Max Holloway will be 45 to 50, somewhere in that range, and Volkanovski maybe like 5 to 10 less. So 35 to 40, 42, somewhere in that range. I think Holloway will definitely be heavier owned. So I'm definitely going to be overweight on this fight in general. And I actually think stacking this fight is going to be it's possible that stacking this fight does land on the optimal, because if both guys land 150 plus and Holloway wins, like, he's going to score, 110 or whatever, and Volkanovski is going to land, or he's going to score 75 to 80. So I think it is possible. I'm going to have a couple lineups. I think right now I maxed the 55. I have 10 lineups in the big one, the 2450. So out of those 10 lineups, I'll probably have, let's see, 5 Holloway, 3 Volkanovski, and 2 with them stacked together. Something like that, I think, is about right in terms of percentage and exposure. So, yeah, that's my take on that one. Going to be a fun one for sure. And then the moment you've all been waiting for, the Kamaru Usman, a.k.a. Marty Fake Newsman, versus Colby Covington, Colby Chaos Covington. So I definitely think this is going to be one of the best fights of the year in terms of, like, how excited people are to watch it. And I totally get it. Like, 2 amazing wrestlers, 2 guys that have bad blood, These guys do not like each other. Two guys that historically score very, very well on DraftKings, and the price is interesting. Usman is 8.9K. Colby is only 7.3K. So immediately, when you see a guy like Colby, who's a DK favorite, who always scores well, that cheap, he's obviously going to have a ton of ownership. He's right up there with Nunes and Holloway. I think if you go Nunes, Holloway, Colby, you better have some Chase Hooper, Daniel Tamor, Soriano, one of those guys mixed in, because those three that's gonna be the chalkiest core of players. It's Colby, Nunes, and Holloway. And it's great. I mean, there's a reason they're gonna have ownership. Those are like three of the best like point per dollar plays on the slate. But just keep in mind, like, trying to beat out 9,000 people, if 4,000 people have that same combo, you're gonna need to be very, very different in the other three fights. So, but getting back to this fight here, so I think, you know, there's definitely some things we need to talk about in this one. This is going to be a fun fight. Like I said, both guys only have one professional loss. Colby's loss came via submission against Warley Alves back in 2015. Kamaru Usman's only loss came to Jose Caceres back in 2013. So basically, striking, wrestling, and grappling. Let's break it down. So when it comes to grappling, I have to lean Kamaru Usman. He earned his black belt in BJJ earlier this year. So he's a black belt. Colby's not. You got to give it to him. Like, no arguing with that, in my opinion. As for the wrestling, I would say it's like almost dead even. Obviously, Colby Covington wrestled at Oregon State. Go Beavers, which is obviously Division One. And Kamaru Usman was Division Two. But on the flip side, Kamaru Usman didn't start wrestling until he was in high school. And towards the end of his D2 career, he was actually beating like All-American D1 wrestlers. So he was a guy who bloomed late for sure. And he actually, I think, has a little bit better top control than Covington does. You see in the Covington fights, a reason why he lands 10 to 12 takedowns is because guys are always getting up. We even saw it in the Robbie Lawler fight, his last time out. As far as Kamaru Usman, usually when he takes guys down, and he's had fights where they got back up and he's landed 12, 10 takedowns too, but usually like the Tyrone Woodley fight, once he got him down, like, he was not getting back up, and he advances a lot on the mat. So no real advantage, I think, in the wrestling department. And then when it comes to the striking, I think, you know, there's no denying Kamaru Usman has a little bit more pop in his punches, but Colby is the more active puncher. So, you know, as you can see, these are three very, very even categories on both of these guys. I think Kamaru Usman is the rightful favorite, just because of the reason I mentioned: grappling advantage, more powerful punches. On the flip side, though, I think when it comes to cardio, both guys have great cardio, but Covington, I think, has the better cardio and the better pace. One thing that was mentioned on the Dog or Pass podcast by Cody Safdie and Paul Shaughnessy, great podcast. If you don't subscribe to them on the Pat Mayo Network, do that. It's a great show. One thing they mentioned, and I can definitely back it up because you see it in all of Usman's fight, like, it's not some secret, is when he throws in flurries, or when he's exhausting a lot of energy, he'll burst and then he'll rest. He'll burst and then he'll rest. Colby does not rest. Like, he is on him. And some of these other fighters against Usman, like, they let him rest. Colby is not going to let him rest. As soon as Usman throws in a flurry, like, Colby's going to be on him. So I think over the course of 25 minutes, especially if this goes the full 25, which I think it might, that is a pretty big significant factor here. So both fighters, great plays. I think regardless of who wins, whoever wins is going to end on the optimal lineup. We've seen Usman score 130, 150. We've seen Colby up there as well. Both of these guys could land takedowns, advances, and they throw in a lot of volume. So the official pick, and some people are going to be surprised by this because early on, I'm actually a little bit surprised by this because early on in the week when I was talking to my buddy, he's like, Colby's definitely going to win, right? Because I pretty much, I'm on Covington in pretty much every fight. and it's paid off. And I've pretty much been on Usman in every fight, and it's paid off. And early on in the week, I'm like, oh yeah, dude, Covington for sure. And the more that I looked at it, and the deeper that I got, and basically all the numbers sort of say that Kamaru Usman is going to win, and he should be the official pick. So that's what the numbers say. That's all I'm saying. Now, something that the numbers won't tell you is something like pace and heart. Those are things that I think lean Covington's way. So that's why I think overall this fight realistically should be a pick'em, or like, minus 120 Usman, plus 110 Covington, something like that. So at minus 175, I think the line is way too wide on Usman. And so for those reasons, I'll be heavier on Covington because he's so cheap. But like I said, everybody's going to be heavier on Covington because he's so cheap. So just keep in mind that there could be some potential leverage on Usman. And I think Usman will be popular too, but I think it'll be about 5 to 10% less than Covington. So I think there is a little bit of leverage on the Usman side. I'll have exposure to both, heavier on Covington just because he's so easy to fit in. But yeah, that's basically my breakdown on the entire card. So to recap, basically my core on DraftKings is going to be Amanda Nunes for sure, Colby Covington, but really, just that fight in general. If you want to go Usman and mix in some of the other underdogs, that's fine too. And then Max Holloway at 8.7, and it goes the same boat. Like if you want to mix that up and go Nunes, Usman, Volkanovski, I like that. Or if you want to go Nunes, Colby, and Holloway, I like that. And, mix and match. I like all of those. Those are the core fights for me. And then as far as underdogs go, I like Colby, obviously. I like Mike Perry more than the public. I like Irene Aldana more than the public. And Volkanovski, I'm probably equal to the field just because I think he's going to be really heavily owned. But overall, I think, in terms of DraftKings, guys that are going to be lower that I'm high on is going to be Soriano for sure, and then Daniel Tamer. I think those two fights in general on the early prelims are kind of going to decide the night, not just for me, but I think they're going to kind of decide the whole slate. So I think they're important to get pieces of. You can get pieces of both sides if you have a different lean than I do. That's fine too. Some of the bets that I like, obviously Amanda Nunes, the inside distance line minus 140 or minus 148 on DK Sportsbook, and then the plus 160 or plus 168 TKO. I like that a lot. I like Soriano at plus money. He's plus 100 to win, but his inside distance line is you get even more bang for your buck on that. So I like that as a bet as well. And if you're feeling really confident, you can bet him by TKO specifically, and you'll get a little bit more pop on that one too. But that's it, guys. UFC 245, stacked card, one of the best cards of the year. Any questions, any last minute questions, get them in the chat now. If not, good luck tonight, guys, and I will see you on Monday, back for the NBA DFS stream at 6. I'll hang out for a few minutes here just to see if we have any questions. If not, we'll wrap it up and call it a day. Thanks, Brett. Appreciate that. If you guys don't already, please click the heart on my channel. Trying to get my followers up. I think I'm at like 34. I need to get to 50, so I definitely appreciate the support on that. Looks like there's not really any questions. So good luck tonight, guys. I know a lot of you guys watch this after it's recorded, so if you're watching this late, shout out to you too as well. Appreciate the support. Good luck, and I'll be in the Discord answering any questions right up until lock. I do have a Christmas party tonight, but the plan is to make it back before the main card, and I'll be watching on my phone if I don't. So good luck tonight, guys. Enjoy the card. Should be a good one, and I'll see you next time.